Our story begins on February 11th, 2003, when Mike Flores wrote an excellent article. I guess the link is dead. Well, he made a few more. Oh, all of these articles are gone. I can't seem to find them anywhere. We'll skip ahead a few years. My story starts in Seattle at a local game store called Phoenix Comics and Games. Great store, it's still around, and up until 5 years ago, it was my local game store. And one day I saw one of the judges playing a game that seemed very odd. There was a pile of draft chaff on the table, and both players were drawing from the same deck. And no, this wasn't Dan. It was Mental Magic, the cheapest and most difficult format in all of Magic the Gathering. And I wanted to tell you about one of my favorite formats of all time, how to play it, some tricks, and why the format is just so fun. But before I get into all that, I need to tell you about Cool Stuff Inc., the sponsor of this video. If you use my code TTM at checkout, you will get 5% off your order. Plus, it supports the channel. Okay, so if you look up Mental Magic online, you might find some weird books, but also old Reddit posts, a wiki page about the format, some articles here and there. Now, the rules between all of these can vary a bit, so I'll start off with how I prefer to play the format, and we'll talk variations after. So the format is very easy to get into. Here's what you need. Get a pile of non-land cards. 100 cards is fine, could be 80, could be 60. I'd say at least 60. And that's it, you're done. No, I'm serious though, like that's the whole deck. Literally a pile of draft chaff. The more random cards from random sets you can jam into a pile, and the bigger the pile, the better. That is literally all you need. Then you and a friend will shuffle up and begin playing Magic. Every card in your hand can be played face down as a land that taps for one of any color but has no basic land types. And you may play the card face down as a land anytime you could normally play a land. Then you can cast all the cards in your hand normally, but each card may be cast as any card that shares a mana cost. So your Grab the Prize could be an Abrade or a Slow Bad Goblin Tinkerer. And once a card hits a revealed zone, such that your opponent can see it, you must name what the card is. So once you put your Grab the Prize on the stack, you choose what it is. It is an Abrade. Now it's an Abrade and you resolve it as if it was an Abrade. Now we always played with, you either need to know the name of the card, and then if you have the name of the card, you're allowed to look it up. Or if you can recite all of the card's oracle text, you're allowed to play it. If you don't know the card, you can't be searching around on Scryfall to find something that fits. You just gotta know the card. And then when it is cast, the card will remain that card forever. So Grab the Prize being cast as a slow bad, when it hits the graveyard, it stays as a slow bad in the graveyard and has all the properties of that. Once a card is named, nobody else can name it. It's a singleton format. And remember, you can always play the card as whatever it is. If you can't think of a card, just play it at face value. Now both players will share a deck, but you don't share a graveyard. And that's it. Otherwise, you just play Magic. 1v1, 20 life, play the game, naming all the cards you can. There are a ton of variations you can do with this format, and I'll tell you most of the common ones, but first, I have to fulfill a contractual obligation. Oh no, it's that guy. Who? The guy who talks about Card Castle, the great app that lets you sort your collection digitally. What's wrong with that? Whenever he talks about the app, something bad happens to the other people at the game store. I gotta get out of here. Hey, you looking for a commander game? If we don't have 4, we can play Mental Magic while we wait. Sure. Awesome. I was worried you were gonna say something about Card Castle and then something fantastical would happen. What did you just say? Oh my god, what's happening? What's going on? It's the apocalypse. People need to click the link in the description below to download the app today. How does that help us? It doesn't, but it'll help people at home. Let's talk variations. When you play this with your buds or unsuspecting victims at your local game store, you should lock down a few rules. Hybrid mana and Phyrexian mana. I'm a fan of allowing a normal color pip to count as Phyrexian or hybrid because it just allows for you to cast more things. So if a card cost 1 green-white, you could cast it as a Kitchen Finks. Another variation is when a card moves to a hidden zone, like your hand, then you can replay it as a different card. This allows for all sorts of weird shenanigans if you have ways to bounce your own stuff, but I think it makes the format even more complicated than it already is, and ultimately isn't worth the hassle. Another variation is to make all of the face-down lands as lands of all land types. This opens up for other synergy like Arbor Elf, Filth. Allowing those land walk cards to be unblockable is interesting, although it does make them significantly more powerful, so keep that in mind. You also need to decide if land ramp will work. Many players will say no, but it's another variation you could do. A rampant growth could in theory grab any land. Another thing to adjust is the ban list. Now, having absolutely no bans is wild. You can play Time Walk, Black Lotus, or some of the old broken anti-cards like Contract from Below, which is a 1-mana Wheel of Fortune. Ultimately, maybe play with the ban list that you're most familiar with. If you play mostly EDH, perhaps select the EDH ban list. So those are all the common rules and variations that I see, and keep in mind this is a for fun format, so choose the variation that works best for you and your friends. Now that you know everything you need to know before playing Mental Magic, I want to give you some pro tips. If you are playing the normal variation where once cards are revealed you must name what it is and that is locked in, which I do recommend, then playing 1-mana discard spells like Thoughtseize or Inquisition can be one of the most back-breaking opening plays. It forces your opponent to reveal their hand, meaning they have to lock in what every card in their hand is on turn 1. They can still play them face down as lands as needed, but they're stuck with what that is. Keep in mind this can backfire because if they name something, that is what it's locked in as, and you can't name that as well. Another tip, tutor, tutor, tutor. Cards that search your library for things are way stronger in this format than they are in basically anything else. A Stoneforge Mystic is phenomenal. Letting you turn any 3-mana artifact into a sword of whatever and whatever can be really clutch. And any black tutor will instantly get you thousands of options because you can get anything and turn it into anything. Assuming, of course, that you know enough cards. Another class of cards that are very good in Mental Magic are things that care about hitting non-lands. So Ajani Unyielding is a great example. His +2 lets you add all of the non-lands from the top 3 of your deck. And since your deck is all non-land cards, you get to draw 3 every time. Other things like Sunbird's Invocation can be extremely powerful since you just have so many options off of the one cast. And remember, you share a library, so a lot of the cards that are good in Dan also work here. You can give your opponent a difficult mana value with a Ponder or Preordain. You can also play stuff like Misinformation to put some of their cards from your opponent's graveyard on top of the library so you get to draw them. Last pro tip is to come up with a few pieces of removal at different mana values. This way, if you see a Gale Wind Moose, you know it's a Desert Twister, or an Abbey Griffin can be a Faith Unbroken. Memorizing a bit of removal at every single-ish mana value that you can reasonably memorize will get you very far in Mental Magic. I love Mental Magic. This format is so weird, wacky, and fun. I know it might sound like an unintuitive, weird way to play Magic, and it kind of is, but when you sit down and play it, the game feels like limited on steroids. Games are very scrappy, very mid-rangey. It's a common way that these games end up, where you're trying to play these kind of weird, dinky creatures and figure out what, odd removal you can squeeze out of different mana costs. But it doesn't end there. You can do so many things in the format that you can't really do in Limited. You can win in so many different ways. Most games you will try to mid-range out your opponent, but remember, you can play anything. You can storm off, play alternate win cons, or just assemble a combo. I mean, if you storm off in a game of Mental Magic, you will feel like an absolute genius. Admittedly, Mental Magic is not for the faint of heart. It is pretty difficult, and it's not great for new players. You're just not going to know as many cards, which is fine. As you play more of the game, you'll just naturally get way better at this format. I think one of the best parts of Mental Magic is there's no reason not to try it. You, or maybe somebody you know, has draft chaff lying around that you could assemble a pile of. So share this video with a friend who you think would be interested, and comment below on how your games go. I would love to hear it. Thank you so very much for watching. If you like my videos, consider subscribing and liking. Also, check out the Patreon. I got a lot of perks like deck reviews, Discord server, and being in the credits like my tier 3 patrons. Lastly, I wanted to just off script candidly talk about the channel. This is my last upload for the calendar year, and I wanted to thank everybody for the support. It has been amazing. I have big things planned for the channel in 2025. Stay tuned. I really hope you'll enjoy it.